Welcome back to Let's Unpack That. It's a podcast where we two college grads analyze books that we read in middle school from literary and socio-political perspectives. I'm Lydia.
And I'm Nina, and we're having technical difficulties.
As always, what else is new?
Absolutely nothing.
Although I am getting a new hard drive soon.
Yes, when is that going to happen? I meant to ask you.
Early March. I'm getting an SSD, which is supposed to be faster than what I have now, and it's cheaper than replacing my whole computer, and we already confirmed that the hard drive is the problem that's slowing me down.
Are you going to lose all of your files?
No, I'm going to back everything up.
Oh, good.
I have an external hard drive.
Ah, yes, external hard drive. That thing saved my life in college.
Yeah, me too, because my hard drive has failed before.
Mm-hmm.
Not this one, but freshman year I had to get a new one because it kept clicking.
Ooh.
It was still under warranty.
Hey, awesome.
But, I mean, now it's not, because it's 6 years old, almost.
How has it been? Almost 6 years. Did you see that photo I posted on Facebook of you, me, and Mallory meeting Carrie Elways?
Yes, and I have a distinct memory of that day because I asked him to sign a piece of paper and he said no because he could only sign books, and I was super embarrassed.
Wow. Well, and I'm just looking at that photo thinking, God, I looked like I was 15. Like, really, really looked like I was 15. Here I was thinking I was the shit because I was a freshman in college. But my God, I look so young. Who let me go to school looking so young? Why didn't anybody tell me?
It was before the dark circles really set in.
I know.
Yeah, also, like, I'm bald in that photo.
Oh, yeah, that was right after you shaved your head.
Yeah, it was either January or February. Must have been February since you posted it on the anniversary.
Yeah.
It's February now. Wow.
Anyway, we miss college. / do we? I kind of do.
I miss living in close proximity to all of my friends and being able to take naps in the middle of the day.
Ah, yes. That was also nice.
Although I never took advantage of it and took naps in the middle of the day, and now I wish for that.
But, you know, you could have ended up like me, sleeping through meetings and classes. So maybe it's better that you didn't take advantage of it.
Yeah, I mean, one of us had to stay awake.
And it certainly was not going to be me.
Right. Are you getting that figured out?
Slowly but surely. Maybe. I'm supposed to have a sleep study done.
Oh, okay.
Eventually.
Yeah.
I'll add it to the list of things I need to do after I get back from Maryland. Because your girl got a promotion. What up? Actually, when is this coming out? This might be coming out right before I leave for Maryland. So I'll be in Maryland maybe when you're listening to this. Hello, everybody. Very exciting. I'm going to be getting off of the phones and doing something independent. And I'll probably have a podcast going in my ears for 8 hours a day. And I'm so excited for it, and I'm so ready. Oh my God. This next week is going to be hell because my start date is going to be the 2nd, and wow, this is going to be tough. Oh boy, it'll be good. So, murder, shall we?
Yeah, let's. Do you want to read the summary of chapter 13, or shall I?
I can read it.
Okay, you wrote it.
Yeah. My dog is barking outside. I wonder why.
Squirrel.
No, just old and deaf.
Oh, that dog. Okay.
Yeah, no. The other dog is sleeping on my bed.
Oh, boo.
He's totally passed the fuck out right now. He's over this whole podcasting thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess so.
Anywhoosum, chapter 13. If you remember, Katniss is now in the games. She is trying to survive. And she was she was doing well, you know, she's kind of out by herself doing her thing, you know, catching some food, hanging around. It was good. And then she wakes in the middle of the night to see a wall of fire descending on her. So we pick up right at chapter 13 with Katniss as she is struggling to free herself from her sleeping bag and her tree perch where she has belted herself in. She flees into the forest and she's sick and choking before long. And then things take a turn for the worst, as they happen to do so in this book. Fireballs are being lobbed at her, and one of them catches her leg, which severely wounds her, burns her leg, and she actually ends up burning her hands pretty well, too. She continues to flee until she reaches a safe zone, assuming that she has been pushed towards the other tributes in order to spice up the action for the audience. Hurt and tired, she soaks in the pond before being chased up a tree by the courier pack. And there in the tree, she tries to come up with a plan when suddenly a wild Roo appears. So this one's a pretty action-based chapter. There's not a lot to break down in terms of character analysis or anything like that, but I really wanted to poke on one of the lines that Katniss thinks to herself, that is, but it really jumped out to me the second time I read it. So the line that really stood out to me that I really wanted to dive into was, and I was reading this off of my iPad, so I don't have the page number and I'm sorry. But a line that she says is, "The audience will be getting bored, claiming that these games are verging on dullness. And that is one thing that the games must not do." So let's talk about media manipulation. Katniss is very aware of what the games means and the implication behind its entertainment, quote-unquote, status. We've discussed previously that the games were established to maintain control over the districts after the uprising to keep citizens under the heel of the capital's boot. So these games and requiring everybody to watch them year after year, it's kind of a form of propaganda, but it's also a form of media manipulation. It's interesting because it's changed from just a warning to the different districts. We see here now that it also is a necessary evil for the capital to keep control. The games have become the center of a very political and social order. So something else to think about. There's never any mention of any news sources anywhere within the books or within Panem.
Yeah.
How do you know whatever is going on? It's only from the capital, one source. And honestly, I can't wrap my mind around it, not having a newspaper or any kind of form of announcements other than from, imagine if we were just getting them from Washington, D.C. That'd be insane.
Yeah, the free press is an essential part of a democracy. And I mean, we've discussed before the totalitarian nature of Panem. There is no democracy. There is no freedom of speech. There is no freedom of the press. Like, the Constitution has been long forgotten. It's simultaneously very serious, and it's also a bit of a joke because they created a reality TV program about murder. Why?
It reminds me of the tagline or the slogan for the Washington Post. And their tagline is democracy dies in the darkness. Wow. Wow, I can't talk. Democracy dies in the darkness. Say it with me, kids. Anyway, so that kind of slogan, keeping people in the dark, it's very real here in Panem. And because of that, the media only comes from the capital, right? Like there's no other sources of entertainment or news. Media manipulation pulls into this because it looks at the exploits of the difference between perception and reality. So the capital shows the districts what it wants the districts to see. There's no other difference. Think about later on in the books, we hear about District 13 and how they have been using the same footage year after year after year, showing that the district itself is still destroyed when actually it was thriving, spoiler alert, and full of rebels who are coming back to kick some butt. Forbes published an article. It was published in 2012, and the article title is "What is the Media Manipulation?" It's a definition and explanation of it. And one quote I wanted to pull from it was, and this goes into media manipulation from the U.S. standpoint, an old threat of government abuse of media. We know that the Bush administration was a pro at it. Think of the Dick Cheney leaking bogus information to Judith Miller at the New York Times as an anonymous source and then citing himself without disclosing the conflict to justify the buildup for the war in Iraq. He planted the information, which he then alluded to as support. That happened in 2002.
Dick Cheney made money off the Iraq War. Dick Cheney made money off the Iraq War.
Dick Cheney made money off the Iraq War.
You remember that Vine, right?
But what is media manipulation? Wikipedia, our Lord and Savior, defines it as media manipulation is a series of related techniques which partisans create an image or argument that favors their particular interests. Such tactics may include the use of logical fallacies, psychological manipulations, outright deception, rhetorical and propaganda techniques, and often involve the suppression of information or points of view by crowding them out, inducing other people or groups of people to stop listening to certain arguments, or by simply diverting the attention elsewhere. That's not happening anywhere today in modern America, ever.
Diversion? What diversion?
What diversions? Vote, please, in November. Thank you. Oh boy. Anyway, back to the topic. I think a lot of what Panem does in terms of manipulation is psychological. Psychological warfare is sometimes considered synonymous with propaganda. Again, quoting from Wikipedia here. The principal distinction between being that propaganda normally occurs within a nation, where psychological warfare normally takes place between nations, often during war or Cold War. Various techniques are used to influence a target's values, beliefs, emotions, motives, reasoning, or behavior. Target audiences can be governments, organizations, groups, and individuals. So in this case, obviously, it's taking place within the nation. It's targeting the entire population of Panem. So this tactic of psychological manipulation has been used in multiple wars throughout history. 2009, the people of Israel, for example, in the Gaza war, received text messages on their cell phones threatening them with rocket attacks. This is kind of similar to how Panem obviously is using the game saying, hey, by the way, we can and will kill your children if you try to rise up against us. It's a fear tactic, fear mongering. That's what it is. China is also probably one of the biggest media influencers when it comes to mind. I had a friend who visited China a couple months ago, and she was actually limited to what websites she could access, and even from where and when she could access the internet, which I thought was crazy. She had to very much monitor what she was posting online, and she could only, I think she had to post through some kind of backdoor black market internet way. I couldn't figure it out, but it was insane. The CPJ reports that China's government has core values that are inimical to democracy and press freedom, despite constitutional provisions that say otherwise. Article 35 of its constitution states that the People's Republic of China enjoy freedom of speech, of the press, of assembly, of association, and of procession and of demonstration. But plainly, the Chinese people do not enjoy these rights. At the end of 2019, China had 48 journalists in prison, more than any other nation, according to the CPJ research. And it's been facing a progressively more restrictive media environment since Xi Jinping became president in 2013. It's been gradually closing that space. Marxist journalistic education must be promoted amongst journalists. It must make them dissenters of the party's policies and propositions, recorders of time, promoters of social advancement, and watchers of equality and justice.
Disseminators.
Wow. What
Not
did I say?
dissenters.
I cannot talk tonight. What the heck? God. Disseminators of the party's policies and proposition, recorders of the time, promoters of the social advancement, and watchers of equality and justice. Essentially, look at all the great things that we are doing. Z outlined his expectations for the media standards during a visit to the news establishments in February of 2016, as reported by the state news agency. All news media run by the party must work to speak for the party's will and its propositions and to protect the party's authority and unity. Journalists who step out of line in China face harsh consequences. The crackdown was especially intense in China's far west province of Xinjiang, where CPJ has documented nearly 23 cases of journalists imprisoned for their work, which is nearly half of China's total imprisoned.
Yikes. I mean, democracy has its flaws, but freedom of information is one of the core tenets of the modern world. It's also important to note that what happens in China today is also what happens in Panem a lot in this book. Like, I know sometimes in the later books, when people are talking and they start speaking out against the capital, the broadcast gets cut off. Same things happens in China. Like, I also have a friend who visited there pretty recently, and like, if somebody on TV was live and they started saying something that the party didn't agree with or that the government didn't agree with, the channel would just cut out. It would just
insane.
Stop. And yet China, as exemplified in its constitution that you just read, claims to be a free country. And so does Panem.
Yeah.
So democracy really does die in darkness.
It does.
If you don't pay attention, if you don't keep fighting for that, it's so easy to take it away. Which is why it's so important that you go vote. I recently re-registered to vote in California as a Democrat for the first time.
Whoa.
because I hadn't registered to vote since I was 17, and they still had my college address,
What were you registered as before?
independent.
Okay.
Which, thank God, 17-year-old me didn't register as a Republican because I
Yeah,
would have.
really.
It was in econ class that we registered because the League of Women Voters came in and they like gave us all the forms and went through with us how to fill it out and collected it from us and made sure that we were registered. So also, if you are 17 and will be 18 before the next election where you are, you can pre-register. So you'll just have it taken care of now. But that's what I
Please.
did. I pre-registered in class. But the thing was, I had taken a quiz because we had to do a report on the political parties, and we had to do a report on the one that most closely aligned with our views. And guess which one I got?
Which one?
The Republican Party.
Oh, goodness gracious. It's like I don't even know you.
Told you I was homophobic back then. So thank you past me for registering as an independent, not GOP. But now I've registered as a Democrat, so I can vote in the Democratic primaries in my state.
Yeah. I just filled out my ballot actually today.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I'm a permanent vote by mail because I get too nervous about going to polling places. So, like, that's an option so that even if you're, like, anxious or don't think that you'll be able to make it day of, you can still vote. And it's really important that you do.
I would recommend voting by mail if you still
Yeah.
can, honestly, because it gives you time to think about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, like, you can just put it in the mail and it's done. You don't have to wait for hours. You don't have to take time off of work. Like, it's done and it's okay.
I'll take days to go through all the information and to do all my research and to fill out the whole thing. And it's just because like I can't imagine doing that in a booth when there are dozens of people behind me in line.
Yep.
Even if I had all my selections done, I would worry about spoiling my ballot. So, yeah, register to vote. It takes like 5 minutes. Just Google register to vote your state, and probably the first .gov link that comes up will be the right one. And if you're not sure if you registered to vote, you can check your registration on that same site. Just make sure it's a .gov because you don't want your information to get stolen. But just take 5 minutes to do it.
Amen.
So going back to Panem, wow.
Back to our program.
Yeah. Part of this made me wonder if Collins used the precedent of the real world to create this one. Like how Margaret Atwood created The Handmaid's Tale based on, well, all of these things have really happened in real life. We're just putting them all in one place. I wonder if Collins did the same thing here, where every governmental act has real world precedent.
That'd be really interesting. I would love to ask her that question.
I wonder if we could find the answer somewhere. I think as a teen, this world seemed very far away and very impossible. And now, with a lot of like the rise of new nationalism and new forms of authoritarianism and our current president, it seems a lot more real and it seems a lot more possible that the United States could descend in it. Because I remember thinking as a teen, like, the United States wouldn't fall. There's no way that the United States could fall. And now I can see that happening.
Yeah.
Whether due to some government activity or climate change. There are a broad range of reasons why the United States is not infallible and it's not immune to the flaws that have made nations fall before.
And it has happened. Rome fell.
Yeah.
The British Empire. I mean, these things do happen. Anyway, back onto the cheerful stuff.
Yeah. Wow. Go vote, kids.
Go vote, kids.
So back to manipulation. Media.
Back to manipulation, yeah. It also actually exists in entertainment. So movies, for example. And do you...
The
I don't know
Bachelor.
Yeah. Do you remember how, I don't know if you ever read this article, but there was when Pitch Perfect 3 came out, there was actually a little bit of a stir about it because it had portrayed like these big parties and these really attractive military men and like how great it is to be in the armed forces. And Some people actually saw that as kind of as a propaganda piece towards like, oh my God, look, the Bellas are singing for the military and look how great it is. And they're having a huge party.
I mean, Hollywood has always had pro-military ties.
Oh, always. But movies themselves also use visual perception triggers to make a sequence more hypnotizing. Essentially, I read an article from Wired.com how movies manipulate your brain, and actually the example was I think Iron Man 2, which was great. But one of the quotes I took from that said, "Visual perception feels a lot like continuous streams, but it's not. It actually happens when we look at one thing at a time, taking in a bit of information here, and then moving our eyes to take in a bit of information over there. And then somehow, amazingly, our brain stitches all those bits together to create a seamless experience." That's essentially what filmmakers have been doing for a century. It's the essence of their craft. Psychologically, you can learn a lot from filmmakers. So, with one idea of that being the camera angles of the games and with the action sequences of the games, the goal is to draw the audience in and to focus on what you want them to focus on. And in this case, it's the violence, the confrontations, and the death of the child tributes. This is a very long-winded explanation of a relatively short-winded concept. The games is used to manipulate the audience. And not only does it manipulate the audience to keep the peace, but it now has become a linchpin for the game makers themselves, who must adhere to the entertainment standards to keep the audience in line. In this way, the game imprisons both the districts and its creators.
Huh. Yeah, that is interesting because, like,
Yeah.
if the game makers don't make it entertaining, they don't have a job. But
They don't have a
also,
nation.
if the districts don't participate, then they don't have anything.
Exactly. It's become a stranglehold for both. The game makers are just as imprisoned as the districts are.
I think it really exemplifies how the capital doesn't acknowledge how much it needs the districts to survive. Kind of like how we discussed in a previous episode, President Snow's comment about the capital being the beating heart, and how you also need a bunch of other parts to have a body.
Exactly.
And his refusal to acknowledge that other parts are just as vital as the heart. And so, yeah, they're stuck. They're trapped together and they're mutually codependent, but in a strange way that the capital can't admit because it already has everything. So why would it have to think about that?
Exactly.
So in this chapter, I really focused in on what we learn about the technology in this world. And I think we learn a lot more about Panem than we do about Katniss in this chapter. Because we've already established, like, she's a survivor, but here we get a glimpse into the behind the scenes and how the games actually work, both, psychologically and physically. While she's running from the fireballs, Katniss mentions that certain sections of the arena are rigged for certain dangers, which, one, foreshadows the clock-shaped arena in the next book, but it also gives a little insight into the limits of the capital's technology, which we rarely get in this world. For instance, the burn ointment heals Katniss almost instantly. They have force fields, they have hovercraft, even the shower in the training center was a technological marvel. And in the movies, the tech is seemingly limitless. For example, I always think of how at the end, the wild mutts go instantly from being computer code to being real and physical in the arena. And we don't know how they do that. Like, if
Yeah.
they have some sort of organic printer, or how does something go
They
from
just
being
come up
code to
from the
being
dirt.
physical? Yeah, which seems impossible. But here, and I think in the rest of the book, we're going to see the limit. Because there are limits to the capital's technology. They can't rig every single tree with a camera and a fireball gun and a variety show of other dangers. They have to limit themselves to zones for each danger. And that shows that they have to limit themselves, period. The fireballs aren't just bits of code that materialize in the arena like magic. They have sources and they require raw materials. And the arena, although it looks like natural terrain, must be teeming with tech. But also, how did it only take them a year to build this? And how do they build a new one every single year?
I would say they're probably built out a couple of years in advance.
Actually, yeah, you're right.
Except for the clock one. I think that one they probably put on overdrive to build. Unless it was already built for the 75th Hunger Games, and it just so happened to fit in with what they were trying to do.
Yeah. I don't know. The arenas are such intensive projects, both technologically and just design-wise. I mean, being a game maker must be a huge job.
Oh,
Like, no
yes.
wonder they're the most important person in the Capitol. No wonder Seneca Crane's failing gets him executed, because this is a huge deal. This is a
Huge
huge
deal.
investment, each arena is, to kill a couple kids. It boggles my mind. Like, how do they do that? But also, like, is this technologically within our reach? I think it might be.
Oh, man.
It's just so intense, and but it also gives a sense of the limit of the power of the Capitol.
Yeah.
Because in the movie, everything comes from code, everything happens whenever. We never get a sense of the limit, and so the Capitol seems all powerful and like the tech can do anything.
Yeah.
Here it can't do anything. It has very concrete limits that we see again, for instance, in the second book when they hit the force field.
Yeah.
And those limits are being set up and ready to be exploited to take down the Capitol. That's just so interesting to me. Because before this, the Capitol doesn't seem like to have a weak point.
I wonder though, is the limit purposely set, kind of like how Katniss said, to drive them together, or is it that they literally couldn't do more with what they had? Like, is it intentionally a limit, or is it actually a limit?
I think it's actually a limit, because I think if it were intentionally a limit, they would put fireball cannons in every single tree just in case. Because they don't know where all the tributes are going to go, and they don't know who they might want to shoot with a fireball when. And so keeping their options open would be the best tactical advantage for them to have. And the fact that they don't take it, I think, indicates a limit on their power.
Yeah, fair enough.
Like, on the other hand, it might also be to just give the tributes some semblance of a chance, because, like, the only reason Katniss gets through this is because she makes it out of the fireball area. And if she hadn't been able to do that, then the game makers might not have been as lenient as the tech made them be. I don't know. I think they wouldn't set such concrete limits for themselves on purpose.
I see what you're saying. Maybe I'm thinking too much of the clock thing, where it's like they want to think ahead of where the tributes could be, but I don't know. It's mind-boggling, to be completely honest. It's something that I can't really comprehend.
Yeah, me neither.
We see some more politics at play here, by the way. But also, I think it's interesting how she says at one point that she truly believes that Cinna cares for her. She believes it, but she doesn't necessarily affirm to herself that it's true, right? She's like, I believe that he cares about me. It's not a definitive, he cares about me. She's like, I have led myself to think that. It's like almost like she's giving herself the chance to be wrong, which is really interesting.
Well, I mean, think about it. The last interaction that she had with him before the games, before they said goodbye, was him defending PETA.
That's true.
Also, she's on fire at this point, which is kind of ironic. She's the girl
little more
on
than
fire,
ironic.
and he made her that.
A little more than ironic. Oh, yeah. I think it's interesting kind of to hear the politics and again, Katniss being really good at the theory of it all, not so much in practice. She notes that pity in the games does not get you aid. So there's no underdog syndrome here within the games. And I have to wonder when that changed as a society. Like, people love the idea of an underdog. But when did that change when it came to the Hunger Games and the kids? And when did people start looking away from them?
I think it probably happened around the time that it turned from just a ritual every year to a form of entertainment, which hopefully we get to see in the prequel book. But when you stop thinking of people as people, you stop being able to pity them. And I think that's what's happening here. Although, I think we do start to have a sort of underdog thing with Katniss and with Rue, because Rue is definitely the underdog.
Yeah.
Because Katniss is fighting for her, and Rue has become such a symbol of the underdog and of an innocent child, that sort of feeling starts to come back. So,
Exactly. Yeah. And it's ugh, God. I can't. I mean, I just can't imagine it. I can't.
yeah.
I also thought it was interesting how when she's up the tree after the careers have chased her up the tree, essentially, she's looking at the bow and arrows that Glimmer is holding. And she thinks to herself, I could kill every single one of them if those silver weapons were in my hands. And I thought it was interesting to remember back at the beginning of the book, Katniss and Gale said goodbye, and he told her that the games would just be like hunting. She just had to forget the fact that they were people. And she's fully done that now. She has turned into a hunter. It's a survival mode, it's a tactic, and clearly Gale's words were true because now she can forget the fact that they're people. There is no difference at all.
Yeah. I mean, the careers are flat characters. Most of them. I think we see Kato change a bit at the end. But like Glimmer and all the ones here who are just taunting her, they're all nobodies. And so it's easy for her to view them as just generic enemy, as not really people, just obstacles.
Exactly. This chapter moves so fast.
Yeah, it does. Like she's running and then she's stopping and then she's up a tree and then she's running again and then I wanted to keep reading at the end.
I know. But, even at the end, even with all of this movement in the chapter, there's a little bit of comic relief.
Yeah, this was the funniest chapter yet, I thought. Which I've mentioned before, we didn't get any of the comedy in the movie. I don't know why. Jennifer Lawrence is funny. She is weird.
She's
So they
hilarious.
could have done it. But even though Katniss almost dies again in this chapter, she's actually funny. She takes the time to be herself in her funny way. On page 181, she says, Now I smile. How's everything with you? I call down cheerfully as the careers are at the base of the tree and she's climbing up. This takes them aback, but I know the crowd will love it. It goes on. It's been a bit warm for my taste. What?
What? You were just on fire.
Yeah, you were just on fire. And, like, I mean, the fact that she's able to laugh at that is a sign of a resilient mind.
Oh, yeah.
But also, it's just, like, after she's been running and running for days and struggling to survive for days, it's such a much needed break for the audience.
Oh, it definitely is.
Like, she's not just suffering, she's also getting the time to be herself.
Yeah, yeah. Which is also humanizing. Like,
Yeah.
it centers her.
Yeah, and we talked a bit previously about how sometimes Katniss can seem like a blank slate, especially in the movies, because she always has that stern, I feel nothing expression. And here, we've seen her feel a lot of suffering over the past couple days, but here we're seeing her feel like she's laughing.
Yeah.
So she has a range
She's witty.
of emotions. Yeah, she's witty. She's a kid, and we rarely see that.
I wish it had been more in the movies. A lot of, I think, what the movies did was really turn it into an action movie. But I think that the movies themselves lacked a lot of the depth that we get in the books.
Yeah. Like, the books are not all serious all the time,
Yeah.
even though it's a very serious situation,
Right.
which is interesting.
Chapter 14?
Yeah, let's go. Do you want me to read the summary this time?
Sure.
All right. So, chapter 14. Katniss is up a tree, and she's away from the careers. She's safe from them for now, but they're gonna wait her out. She sees Rue in the tree next to hers, and Rue points up to a tracker jacker nest. So Katniss devises a plan to cut the nest free and drop it on the career pack while they sleep. She receives her first sponsorship gift, which is a jar of burn healing salve, and it is just heaven to her because she's finally getting some relief. And once the pain is gone, once she's eaten a little and taken a few sips of water, she gets to work. During the anthem, she cuts some of the nest free, and then she has to wait till the next morning to finish it. The tracker jackers are still a bit sleepy from the smoke from the fire, but in the morning they are up and awake. So Katniss has to struggle to saw the branch down, even as the tracker jackers are getting mad at her and stinging her. So the nest drops, The careers are attacked. Glimmer and the girl from District 4 are killed. Katniss, because of the stings, starts hallucinating. But even so, she remembers that she needs to get the bow and arrow before they are taken away by the hovercraft with Glimmer's body. So she manages to grab them. There's really gross imagery of either what she's seeing in the hallucination or what the tracker jackers are doing to Glimmer's face. She manages to grab them and starts to defend herself and is like still really out of it when Peeta rushes back into the clearing and tells her to run. Cato's right behind him and is going to kill Katniss, and he tells her to run. So Katniss runs, she hallucinates a bunch of really trippy shit, and eventually she blacks out. So Rue's here.
Rue!
She's on the scene. What has she been doing? How did she get here? Has she been jumping from tree to tree the entire time? Did she have to run from the fire? Or maybe, this was my thought, maybe she stayed close to the careers and watched them from the trees and took advantage of the traps that they set and basically shadowed them. Keep your friends close, but your enemies closer.
That would make sense to me. That seems to be kind of her MO.
There's probably another fan fiction from Rue's point of view, honestly, and I'm going to find it.
Ooh, I hope it's well written.
Me too. Because I just want to know what she's been doing. How does she make it this far?
Yeah.
How has she survived? Like, there is a pond nearby here, but Katniss went for days and walked without seeing any water. And, like, where was this pond?
Yeah.
But that's a side note.
So I hate wasps. They were a huge problem at the barn in Mississippi. So I actually looked up healthline.com and looked at wasp stings and tried to see what their symptoms were. Obviously, they're nowhere near as bad as the tracker jackers, but normally large local reactions will subside after a week or so, but they do produce a very large and painful welt most of the time.
Entire week?
It says a week or so.
I mean, how compared, I've never been stung by a bee or a wasp. How long does a bee sting take to heal or go down?
A couple of days, I think.
Okay. Side note, wasps were a huge problem at my old high school.
And honestly, actually, according to Healthline as well, having a large local reaction to a wasp sting one time doesn't necessarily mean that you'll get the same reaction in the same way if you get stung again.
So you can build immunity?
Yeah, or it seems like you could have a strong reaction and then never show symptoms again. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of science behind it, but I loved this closing line of this article that I thought I just had to share with everybody. The closing line says, "Try to avoid being stung to prevent these uncomfortable symptoms."
Wow.
Wow.
I was just gonna run into a wasp nest.
That was my plan.
Yeah, so the tracker jackers, wow. These are some intense bugs. Apparently their nests are all around the districts,
Yeah.
like surrounding them. This might have been a bit of a barrier to Gale and Katniss running away if every time they encountered one, they had to head the opposite direction.
Might have been a slight slowdown.
Yeah, and I mean, definitely intended to keep anyone from running away from the districts. That's, I think, something that we had a question about earlier. Why wouldn't people just leave the districts? It's because out there is unsafe.
Yeah.
And guess what? It's a biological weapon. Woot woot.
Ooh.
Biological weapons are illegal under the Geneva Convention, but we're going to discuss that. So, tracker jackers would literally count as biological warfare. And that occurred to me. I mean, it makes so much sense, but it's also so unusual because nowadays we don't encounter a lot of biological weapons. Like animals being engineered to kill people or chemicals being engineered to cause diseases or something like that. We haven't really seen that in the large-scale public eye since the Vietnam War, which it was illegal back then. It's still illegal now. But a biological weapon is, to quote Wikipedia, the use of biological toxins or infectious agents such as bacteria, viruses, and fungi with the intent to kill or incapacitate humans, plants, or animals as an act of war. So, biological weapons have been banned internationally since the end of World War I. under the 1925 Geneva Protocol. And you may be asking at this point, how is the US allowed to use Agent Orange in Vietnam? Well, it wasn't, because remember that plants count too. If something is designed to kill plants, that also counts. Agent Orange was a herbicide designed to kill vegetation and beat back the jungle, which is why the 1972 convention had to clarify that researching, making, stockpiling, and transporting biological weapons was also not cool, and all existing biological weapons should be destroyed. By the way, all this info is from the Red Cross website.
Interesting.
So I mention international law here because, once again, it led me down a spiral of what is the world like? The fact that they used biological weapons on their own people indicates that either the United States completely disconnected from the world or international law went down the toilet. We'll probably get more hints about this in the prequel because it takes place in the capital, which is the only part of Panem that would feasibly have any contact with the rest of the world. And we've talked about the US a lot. And the US is the center of the Hunger Games. The Hunger Games series is very US centric. Technically North America, but it's mostly the United States.
Or what was the United States.
Yeah, of like what became of the United States after something happened. But now I'm also really curious about the rest of the world. Does the rest of the world know what Panem is doing? Does the rest of the world care what Panem is doing? Has the rest of the world gone down a similar toilet?
Does Panem just not care? Sort
Yeah.
of how like our current policies and our president don't care about what the rest of the world thinks, which is such a
Could Panem potentially be the recipient of international justice after it comes out what they've been doing? What is the state of all that? Kind of like taking it back to The Handmaid's Tale. In The Handmaid's Tale, everybody in the world knows basically what the United States has become. They have vague ideas, but they know that it's like a totalitarian religious state. Here, I wonder if that's also the case and they feel similarly to The Handmaid's Tale, like they can't do anything about it. Because maybe in this case, international law is holding them back.
maybe so.
When it's not holding Panem's government back. I don't know. It's so interesting to think about, like, what is this narrow world of Panem? What is beyond it? I want to know.
I do too. I mean, because, spending so much time abroad, I lived 45 minutes outside of Geneva. So I spent quite a lot of time there. And speaking with people who have lived in Switzerland their whole lives or traveling around Europe like I did, international law is so important, and like policies and how we interact with the rest of the world and the different countries is so important. And I'm not going to talk too much about it. I'm going to try and cut myself off here because I'll go on a really long tangent. But the fact that we are so, as right now as a nation, so succinctly cutting all of our ties with international allies is a very bad idea. And that just, what you said here, it adds to my curiosity. What is going on? What does the rest of the world look like? How have they been able to get away with this?
Yeah. Like in this future world, is Panem still considered the superpower that the US has been considered for a long time? Or is it
I don't see it
like,
having a lot of
irrelevant?
outside trade.
Yeah.
I don't know. It seems like it's a self-sufficient society.
It seems like it. But is it really?
Yeah.
I keep going back to, well, why do they actually still use coal?
Yeah. Questions that Collins may be able to answer for us.
Hit me up on Twitter. Sue, please. I have questions.
Hey, let's get trippy with some hallucinations. I don't know about you, but I've never actually tripped on any kind of drug. I've heard some funny stories from people who have, but I've never done it.
If
I've been
you've never
cross-faded.
tripped, why would you even fathom that I had?
I don't know, but I mean, yeah.
You've
no.
done everything. I've done nothing.
I have not done everything. That is a bold-faced lie. I am quite clean. I am almost straight edge compared to a lot of people that I know.
Well, you've
Thanks
still done
very
more
much.
than me.
Yeah.
And by done, I'm not talking about drugs. I'm talking about like life experience. Like,
That's true.
like you have been high. I have never been high.
It's true. Well, I can't really say that I've been high. I've been crossfaded both times. And both times I felt like I was in a washing machine. And the second time I ended up throwing up on the sidewalk downtown. So,
See, I
really,
get that same washing machine feeling just from taking a nap and waking up.
I was like on a spin cycle washing machine. Oh my gosh. But here, Katniss is having a full on trip.
Yeah, a bad trip. Ooh, this is really fucking scary. I mean, trees turning into blood, ants burrowing into her eyes. Like, wow,
Ugh.
that's like every single phobia that she might have. Yikes, it's all happening. And we don't know, like, how or why. So I did a little bit of research on hallucinogens, as you do. By the way, I'm definitely on some watch list now because I Googled biological weapons and hallucinogens at the same time.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. My work computer at yeah, no. I was listening to a podcast about murder on my work computer while also researching this. No, they're totally watching me.
I promise I'm not in violation of the Geneva Convention.
We just wanted to talk about it.
Yeah, just wanted to learn. So anyway, hallucinogens such as LSD actually affect a neurotransmitter that we might be familiar with or a little bit too unfamiliar with. Our friend serotonin.
Never heard of it.
Wow. To quote Wikipedia, it initially disrupts the interaction of nerve cells and the neurotransmitter serotonin. It is distributed throughout the brain and spinal cord, where the serotonin system is involved with controlling the behavior, perceptual, and regulatory systems. So that includes senses and how you perceive the world, which is
Wow.
why it makes you have hallucinations.
But the good news is now, even with her hallucinations, Katniss has her bow, and the games
Yay.
can officially begin. And actually, relatively speaking, she gets her weapons pretty quickly. And how do you think it would have played out without her bow? What survival tactics could she have used? I almost wonder that if she would have been in danger of a self-fulfilling prophecy, thinking that she has nothing she can do without her bow and get herself killed when she could have had a shot. Like, how different would it have been had she not had her bow?
I think she would be put out for a while and then she would just make one because, like, you can pretty easily make a bow, and her father's bows are no doubt handmade, so she probably wouldn't have a problem. She would definitely think that she had a problem for a long time watching those glinty silver weapons being taken into the sky and out of the games. I think once she was able to get settled and like not run for her life every day, and once she was able to spend another day with water, she would be able to figure it out like, okay, I can create stuff. I can create weapons. I have a knife. That's really all you need.
Yeah.
So she's resourceful. It just takes her a minute to get there.
Yeah, she spent so much time running that she hasn't even had a chance to think about it. But hopefully,
Yeah.
as she survives and less competitors are in the arena with her, she has more time to think and slow down and actually make something.
Yeah, which also brings up the question, is anything ever going to slow down for her because she's the star of the show?
Yeah.
But if there was ever like just when you get an afternoon, you can just rest.
Chill vibes.
Chill vibes in the arena.
And then this guy coming out of nowhere.
This guy.
This guy.
This guy.
Tell us about this guy, Lydia.
Pita.
That
This
asshole.
pita guy. Mm-hmm. This pita bread man.
Throw down.
He saves her life. Again. Like,
Why?
I'm not exactly sure, and I'm not exactly sure what I want to think, but at the end of this chapter, Peeta tells Katniss to run when Cato's right behind him and can obviously hear him telling Katniss to run instead of killing her. He betrays Cato right in front of him
Yeah.
to save Katniss.
Dumbass.
Yeah, but also sweet
Why?
dumbass. Earlier in the chapter, Katniss thought, even if it means a little extra food for my family, the idea of Peeta being crowned victor is unbearable.
Seems a little bit harsh.
Yeah, at this point, she solidly decided, like, no, I want him dead. Because before she was flip-flopping and being like, well, I mean, he loves me and he did give me an advantage, but also he's running with the careers and that's bad.
I don't think she ever thinks he loves her. I think most of his opinion is I think most of this opinion is because he's been running with the careers.
Yeah, but at this point, it's solidified into, okay, yeah, he can die. Whereas his opinion of her, I think we can safely assume, has never wavered from keep Katniss alive.
True. Yeah.
Even when he was running with the careers, he was always putting off them killing her. Like, just wait out the night. Just, we'll find her next time. And, like, he's bought her time by betraying Cato right in front of him so that the careers wouldn't get her.
Yeah.
And that's putting himself in danger to save her.
Yeah.
I don't know if he did it because he loves Katniss or because there's some other manipulative reason. Like maybe Haymitch told him, yeah, go with this path. The audience will love it and maybe they'll let you both survive, because that is what ends up happening.
Maybe.
But I don't know if it's out of genuinely caring for her or some other manipulative reason.
I guess we'll have to see and find out. I would love to know what Haymitch and Peeta talked about when they were training by themselves. I would love to know.
What is the truth?
What is it? Who can say?
Oprah.gif. What is the truth?
Oh boy. Well, this is a pretty fast-moving couple of chapters here. I'm looking forward to what comes next. I think we're going to be getting really into the meat of the games here within the next couple of chapters. So,
Especially with Rue. Looking forward
yeah.
to discussing Rue.
This is coming up to be a turning point in the book. So, I'm excited for it. I don't know about you, but I'm excited for it.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. I wanted to keep reading when I was
Yeah.
done with these chapters because they just went by so quickly.
Yeah, yeah. Oh boy. Well,
Like it's getting hard to linger on the chapters instead of just breezing past them and keeping reading.
I did have to read them 2 or 3 times before I picked things that I wanted to research into, because otherwise I just wanted to keep going with the story. I definitely had to reread them.
Well, it's a good story.
It is.
I think we can definitely say that.
Yeah. Ugh. All right, guys. Well, thank you again for joining us for yet another episode of Let's Unpack That. You can find us on Twitter and SoundCloud and Stitcher and Apple Podcasts. Hit us up if you have questions, comments, or concerns. And we are in the midst of making an email account. Throwing back to our technical difficulties we mentioned at the beginning of this episode, we're working on it.
Yeah. So funny story. Before we started recording, I tried to create the email address, letsunpackpod@gmail.com. Stop. Give it to me. Give it to me. It's taken. Why is it taken? Also, let's unpack that podcast at gmail.com. Who are you? Give it to me now.
Back off.
And then I got podcast let's unpack that at gmail.com and accidentally added it to my personal account. So we had to go through the whole roundabout of deleting it from my personal account, and now we're trying to create the actual account separate, and it's not working because it says that email address is already taken when it was me who took it. It was me. It was a mistake.
Mistakes were made.
Google, help me. So yeah, but we're working on an email so that people can respond to us even if you don't have a Twitter, or if you don't want to respond in a public forum, you can just email us. So that email address is going to be in the show notes when we get it up and running. But until then, you can always tweet us at Let's Unpack Pod on Twitter.
And DM us.
Yeah. And both of our personal Twitters are on there. They're public, right? Yeah, they're public.
Yeah, I'm not looking for a job right now. That's public.
Yeah, same. Yeah, also special thanks to our audio producer, Dylan Forehand.
As always.
I think we've forgotten to thank him in the last couple of episodes, but he's still working on our stuff and he's still doing a great job.
And we still appreciate him.
Yeah, a whole lot.
A lot.
Yeah, saves me a lot of time and stress.
Alrighty. Well, everybody, have a good next couple of weeks. I'm hoping to see you guys all soon, and maybe we'll get our recording schedule ironed out sometime soon.
Yeah, we got off track.
My dog just groaned so loudly as if he was like, wrap it up already. So I'm going to take that as a sign. Boo is telling me to sign off. Thank you, Boo.
All right.
Let's get this bread, everybody.